2, 1.
Hey there, it's Jay. How are you? Welcome back to another Azure FunBytes. My job is always to help you learn a little bit more about Azure every day. And today I picked a pretty cool subject. I hope you enjoy it. It's been a bit of a difficult weekend for me. And I did not want that to get in the way of teaching you some new stuff. So what I'm going to do today is continue along kind of what we did last time. We're going to talk a little bit more about AZ-900, which is really the basis of a lot of stuff that I like to talk with you all about. I'm going to fix this camera on the top so you can see me a little better. Cool. I like doing this two-camera thing. I like to be able to see me like typing while I'm actually talking to you. I think it's pretty neat. So, hey, want to say hello to everyone that's watching. As always, it's always really great to have you be part of all of this. And so being part of this means more than just watching. It means a lot. It means that you're commenting on the things that we're doing. We're working together. I've had some of you join me live on the stream before. It's been really fun. So today I want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be working on as we kind of continue down the whole AZ-900 world. And what it really comes down to with AZ-900 is getting you up to speed with what you can start doing when you're working with Azure. The goal with these conversations that I'm having, and I'm going to bring up just the basic stuff that I want you to see, where we're going to get started. I want you to follow along with me if you can. If you can't, no big deal. But I want to give you that option. I think it's an opportunity for us to work together. So one thing I didn't do this week, or at least today, I didn't put up the green screen. I didn't really feel like it. So I gave you kind of a view of what my workspace is like. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that as a person that's getting started being in development operations and you're working with Azure. Your workspace is always important for you. Where you're going to get started, how you're comfortable, having a beverage with you nearby for when things get a little difficult and you won't be able to run and grab a beverage. Things that when you really get into it, it's always important to have a nice, comfortable space. So that's kind of what I try to do here. I got the famous dog with me. Let me bring out the famous dog. The famous dog is always kind of great to have around my office. He reminds me that, this is fine. That no matter what I'm working on, no matter how I'm working on it, he's been around here a little bit, just like my buddy Rico, some of you know and have heard about. So he's kind of been like the patron saint of getting me through a lot of these live streams and talking with you all. So, like I said, it's nice to have a comfortable space. That's what I'm trying to do around here. I got my nice window. He hangs out, watches me kind of do my job. Cool. So, like I said, today's focus is around AZ-900. So I'm going to turn off one of the hand. Let's try it. You got my sound now? How's my doing now? You got my sound? Everything working out? Sorry. Okay, great. Thank you. Let me start over again. I apologize about it. So what I wanted to show you is the Azure Fundamentals exam, which is kind of the basis of our conversation and been the basis of a lot of these streams so far. And the reason why is that this is the start of your Azure experience. This is where you can jump on board of Azure and really start to tell people I've got the experience, the knowledge to start working with this. So it really helps whether you're working somewhere now and you just want to show off that you, the thought is that you can show someone that you're working for or someone you want to work for that you've taken the time to educate yourself around the fundamental skills that come along with using Azure. So part of the requirements are the Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals. Now, that's a learning path on Microsoft Learn. I will share that with you as well in the link. But let's take a look. The test costs $99. And if you go around on the web, there are a lot of places that Microsoft has run the Cloud Skills Challenge and things like that. But if you actually go through these, you take some education along with the people from Microsoft, what you'll actually get from the process is the free voucher to take this exam. So I kind of think that it's worth it for you to take a moment, think about how you can really make use of all the resources, including the free resources. So if you get opportunity to get a free certificate, I really, really recommend find them. There are many, many opportunities. Like I said, around Microsoft Build, we had the Cloud Skills Challenge, and that I thought was a really great way to get people right away to the exam and to learn what to do. So the skills measured, let's talk about this. So this was updated on May 28th. And so if you've already taken this exam, you're not going to have to retake it. That's not the reason why it was actually updated. There was just some terminology that they changed, and that made it just a little bit more up to date with some minor things than as far as naming conventions that changed around Azure. Some products were definitely modified in their name. And then based on that, you're going to need to modify an exam so everything is one for one. So that kind of was the process of why they made that exam change on May 28th. So you want to describe the cloud concepts. You want to describe all the core services, describe the security, privacy, compliance, and trust. And I'll talk a little bit about security today, and how we can use security tools built into Azure to secure even at the most minimal level things that we're working on. And then obviously a part of AZ-900 is the big part that you're going to bring to your business or your place of business, whatever it is, to tell your customers, your boss, whoever it is you're eventually trying to make sure wants you to succeed, knows that you're able to use Azure in a cost-effective way. So pricing is just tremendously important to learn about in any cloud scenario. I mean, if you're talking about any of the major clouds, you need to understand how much it's going to cost you to use it, when you're using it, and how you can reduce and expand those costs. Also, to fix those costs a little bit with things like reservations, spot reservations, getting the most out of the solution that you have and not spending tons and tons of cash. Understanding service level agreements. So service level agreements, I definitely recommend if you're a starter, you need to spend some time understanding the different types of SLAs that exist within Microsoft Azure. Every single product has a different service level agreement. Those service level agreements are all based on uptime of those products, fault tolerance, all these really, really specific concepts that are core to almost any cloud. It doesn't matter what you're using. And almost any technology product, like almost every SaaS that exists out there, has some sort of service level agreement. Almost every PaaS, platform as a service, every infrastructure as a service. It's almost necessary to always have a service level agreement. And the reason why is you've got to be able to have a baseline. If someone makes a mistake within an organization, within Azure, somewhere, and the product goes down, it doesn't matter. And you don't meet service level agreements, sometimes you could have credits that need to go back to you or to me. It doesn't matter. If service level agreements aren't met, that's like a contract that says, this is what we say is going to happen when it happens. And when it doesn't happen, we owe you something. Okay, and life cycles, how long a product's going to be around, how long a product can be used, the life cycle of that product, and the version updates, things like that. Important stuff to know. So there's two different ways to prepare. You're going to want to go through these two modules, explore the Microsoft Cloud concepts, AZ-900, and distinguish the cloud core services. So that's another part. You take these, and it's not a slam dunk you're going to pass, but it's certainly going to get you a little bit closer there. So on this page, we've got a training guide, all these things that'll help you get ready to take this test. So we've talked about the test, and we've talked about some of the cloud concepts. So the cloud concepts are these big ideas. So getting started, discussing why, distinguishing models. So the PaaS, SaaS, IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service. So that's where this module really gets you, is like, what is the cloud? How is the cloud? When is the cloud? Where is the cloud? Then we go to the next learning path, and we're going to focus a little bit more on this today. We've talked a little bit about concepts, but we're going to see these Azure Fundamentals. And these Azure Fundamentals are all to give you these architectural component ideas, the real basics, define the different types of service, so you'll understand the difference between VMs, containers, load balancers, content delivery networks. You'll figure out the different types of solutions, the different tools that'll work. So what we're going to kind of focus on today, though, we'll go to browse, are some of the tools around network security groups. So we're going to look up network security. So, little typo there. But see, what's great about Microsoft Learn is that we can type certain subjects that we want to learn about. So there's the fundamentals of network security, which you should really just start with as part of your path down understanding minimal security experience, just getting that little bit of knowledge. And then we've got a whole learning path of network security in Azure. But this is kind of like the basis to secure and isolate access to Azure resources by using network security groups and service endpoints. So let's talk about we can go through this and we can talk about what a network security group. So if we go into introduction, we're going to learn about what it is, but I'm going to give you a little bit closer of an idea what these concepts are. So we're going to close this at here, and you can always go back to all this conceptual education info. I've already put it in the chat, so if you want to go back to it, you can grab those links. So we're going to go over creating a fully configured virtual machine today, and the way we're going to do that is we need to create a public and private key pair for the Linux VMs in Azure. And then more than anything, we need to secure our network. So the first doc that I'm going to give you regarding this little demo we're going to do is this, this doc here around network security groups. And this is just the basis of almost all security filtering for Azure resources. It's really a foundational portion of almost everything in Azure. So here's the link for NSGs. And if y'all have any questions on NSGs or anything like that, feel free to hit me up right now. I see a bunch of you are commenting, and some of you are watching. I've got all that big appreciation for you in what we're doing. I'm going to get started soon on this demo, but let's talk a little bit about security groups. So what is a security group? A security group is simply a place to attach resources, or I should say to put resources inside to determine how network connections will go to the resources associated with that network security group. So for example, we can set a name for the network security group. Then we can create rules for these. So we set a name, a rule, we set a priority. That's the hierarchy of how the different rules. So you have one rule that might match and then another rule that might match, and you can put them all in a certain order. We can do source or destination, so we can actually use IP address blocks, individual IP addresses. We can specify different protocols. The other thing that's been really cool that you can do is rather than specifying IPs specifically, you can use what are our product tags. So what we can do is say, I want all the network connections from Cosmos DB, which is a database service, a NoSQL database service, to have access to this particular network security group. So very, very simple. You can use products within, or you can use IPs. You can say whether you're going to be allowing them in or out in those connections that they're making. The port range, so if you want to specify a specific port, like 80 for HTTP, 443 for HTTPS, and then the basic is saying yes or no. Can you do this rule? Can you not do this rule? That's what this allow or deny is. So we use the source port, destination port, and protocol to allow traffic in and out of our security group and eventually into our resources. So there are some default rules. We'll look at those once we create a VM. You can see all this documentation within that page I just shared with you. I think it's really useful for you to take a look at that and see exactly what the big ideas behind this are. So if I'm looking to the side, it's just because I'm looking to the other monitor I have and just see if anybody's got any questions on Twitter. So far, so good. And of course, let's see, we've got some questions here, or at least a comment from Phil. Hey, Phil. Phil's a really great part of the stream. He's always commenting. He's helping out on Twitter. Tags are a great tool to use inside Azure, used for policies and elsewhere too. Yeah, the tags are really, really helpful. Metadata tags are a little different than the service tags. A service tag represents a group of IP. Metadata tags are really useful for kind of giving some additional information, and you can use those metadata tags to do other things. So if you wanted to scan a metadata metadata tag for the environment, and then run maybe an Azure-less, I should say a serverless function to do something to all those machines that have that particular metadata tag, you could do that. It's really helpful for automation. Thanks, Phil. Try to just make sure that we got our terminology very, very separate for our different aspects of Azure, because these are the things you really need to know to pass AZ-900. You got to know the difference between a service tag and a metadata tag. They are completely different, and that will get you that extra bit of knowledge. Knowing that is just so important. So we've got a little bit more about network security groups. This is a great, great document. I'm going to share this document as well in this blog post, and it really gives you a huge overview of the power of using network security groups along with networks, and how the virtual network can essentially isolate all these different types of environments that will work together to make sure that only specific traffic goes between the two. And you can also use these networks to bind physical networks. So something in your data center can get combined with a network security group in order to combine your two networks together. You could use a VPN, modify what traffic goes in and out. So these are all really, really important things that we're going to do and learn. So there's really just all, like I showed you before, this is essentially all the little items to create a network security group rule. And you can have multiple network security groups. And then here are some ways to create them. Today, we're going to create a security group rule through a script. So I've got a script ready. We're going to take a look at that in a few minutes. But what we're going to start doing is looking at it. So we're going to work on this doc. This is a doc that really is right up your alley as an Azure fundamental. And I can even see one of the contributors is my buddy Neil. He's a great dude. What we're going to do is I'm going to grab this this doc here. Let's go ahead and shorten that. And then this is demo today. Is this link. So this is the demo we're going to work on. This is a script that creates an Azure virtual machine with Ubuntu operating system. And after running the script, you can access the machine over SSH. And so really what we've provided you here is a end-to-end script solution to create a virtual machine, to create a resource group. I should start in order. I'm sorry. So let's look at this a little bit bigger. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this all in Azure Cloud Shell. So I don't need those other two windows right now. So let's take a look at what we're going to do here in this script. So I'm going to literally just copy this entire script, and I'm going to bring it right into the Cloud Shell. I'll show you how that's going to work out. So here's what I'll do is I'm going to go to the dashboard, and I'm just going to get a Cloud Shell ready for me. So we'll click that. I'm going to be using the Bash Cloud Shell. And the reason I want to do this is I want to create the file in code. I'm so used to doing everything in VI. I just want to make sure I'm doing it in code. I could very well also do this on my local machine using Windows Terminal. Here's Azure Cloud Shell. I could do it right here, but I'm going to just use the Cloud Shell right in the browser because it's super easy. And also, I like to be able to compare the two panes because I can see things as they're happening. All right, so we're going to connect that terminal, and let's get back to our script. So I'm going to close up some of our links so that we just kind of keep things clean and easy. But we're going to use this next. So within our script, one of the first things we do is we create an SSH. We tell an SSH key pair to be associated in our VM. So it's not really one of the first things we do. It's one of the things we do when we create a VM. But I should say one of the first things we should do before we deploy a VM is create an SSH key to actually store, I should say to actually connect. So we can use an SSH key to connect to a Windows machine because there's a Windows SSH server. So we can even transfer files over SSH like SFTP and things like that. Also with an SSH private key pair, we're going to be able to SSH into our servers with Linux. and be able to actually access, manipulate when we're in situations that we need to. We could use those keys also for things like our containers, all the different things we can do. So to create an SSH key pair, it's pretty easy, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to shorten this, and I'm going to give you key pair creation. So that's our key pair creation link. And what we're going to do is we're going to, in here, let's take a look here. Why is this important? Well, when we create our VM, there's an area right here called Generate SSH Keys. Now, here's what's going to happen. If I don't have an SSH key created, by default, it's going to quick create a VM, and then within that quick create VM, it's going to create an SSH key for me. If I do have an SSH key, and let me show you where that SSH key has to be. So if I'm doing this in any shell, I'm specifying the default SSH key. And so if you go ls minus al, and then we'll just say tilde to say my user dot ssh. That goes to the SSH directory and looks inside of it. And then the default key that's created is ID RSA. I've got all these different keys for different uses I keep in here, but ID RSA is the default key created. And then we have a public key that goes along with it. And so what we do is when we want to create SSH servers, that public key and that private key are matched up. So the private key gets, the public key gets injected into the user we create on the Linux VM side or whatever service. And then what we do is we match the two sides. So I have the public side. The public side, I essentially can share with anybody and say, this is my this is my way of saying I can access something. And then the other side is the PEM. This is the private key. And the private key says, yeah, this matches, you can access this. And then a connection is allowed and established. That's essentially what happens in this process. But we need to create an SSH key to actually accomplish that. And so to create an SSH key pair, it's just as simple as running this command or generate SSH keys, and it will automatically create that key pair for you. And then we'll always keep that key pair and use that. So as long as this is persisted in storage, all other new VMs are always going to use this private and public key pair for new servers. So what we're going to do is start. So we've got an SSH key. It's already there. So now we're going to go through the process of looking through this sample script. And what this sample script is going to do is kind of give me an end-to-end VPN, an end-to-end VM virtual machine that's got a secured network security group allowing me to only access via port 22 from the world. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to tighten that up a little bit. So let's launch it the way you would launch it here from the Azure documentation. So we'll just copy this. And now what we'll do is we can go into our dashboard, and we've got here our Cloud Shell. And so what I can do here in the Cloud Shell, I'm just going to create a new directory to work in. So make dir, what you call it, stream today. Why not? Ooh, that's I typed it. So make dir stream today, because today I'm streaming. So let's go into stream today. All right, so we're in stream today, and now let's create a file. And to create a file, I can just type code. And code's going to open up this little temporary workspace. But what's actually kind of cool is I can do it this way also. So let's close this. And like I said, it's a little mini version of Virtual Studio Code. If I type code dot, it'll actually show me all the files that are in that directory. I think it's just a little funny right now because there's nothing here in code. It's not going to actually see anything. So what I could do if I back up, there's nothing in this directory. Code's not going to see anything. I'll just give you another example. I'll go back, code dot, there are all the files. So now we can go back to that directory we were just working in that I created stream today. And so in stream today, what we can do is create a new file. So what we're going to do is essentially go to this script, copy it, go back here, paste it all in. So now it's in our editor, and what we can do is go here and save the file. So we're just going to call the file create vm.sh. Save it. Cool. So let's see, where did it save the file? I'm going to just close the editor. Okay. Let's see. I made a mistake, so I'm just going to copy. Here we go. VM. I'll just put it in here. VM create full is the file that we're going to work with. And let's open it up. So I'm just going to use a more, just open it up in the editor. I'm going to kind of talk it through with you before we run it. So we've got our VM create full. I'm just going to open it with VI because that's what I know to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at each line, and I'm going to tell you what each line is going to do. And if you want to, what you could do is this. You could run very well every single line just in a shell like this, and that shell will essentially run all these commands. You could just do it one at a time to actually watch. So why don't we do that? So there's two ways we can do this. The first way is simply exit this shell and run the command. To run the command, it would look a little something like this. It would just be like bash. Clear. It would just kind of look like bash vm create full. And so what'll happen is it'll just start running all the different commands. And if you know anything about bash, bash is just kind of iterative. So it just does things in order based on the way you've written your little code. And so bash scripts are, I mean, it's still code. It's just very, very simple ways of doing things. So let's do it this way. We're already AZ logged in to my Cloud Shell here on my local computer. And this AZ Cloud Shell is the exact same Cloud Shell that I just built here. See, if I go here and shrink this so you can see it a little better. And it's, okay. So if you go here, you'll see like there's our files. There is stream today. There. So you can see everything is replicated. It's all capable of being used on both sides. But I'm just doing it this way rather than just running the script. I want to show you what happens when each line of the script runs. So let's create a resource group. I need everything to be in this resource group. I don't want to name it my resource group though. So you don't have to. I'm just going to name it so I can use a find and replace command in VI. You can use whatever favorite editor you want to. So I'm just going to change my resource group, and I'm going to call it J Gordon AFB Azure FunBytes. And so now I've changed all the names of my security group, and that's just, I mean, my resource group. I just want it that way, but I'm going to leave everything else well enough alone. And so what's going to happen here? Let's take a look a little closer, right? So I'm going to just stretch this out a bit. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new resource group with this name. So all I have to do is go here and copy this line right here. And we can just paste it right here. And so that'll create a resource group. And as always, our output is in JSON. So now we're going to create a virtual network. This is actually like the private public network that's going to work, that you can make network rules for. You can set up subnets. You can really create complex networks. I've got a whole stream on what VNets are all about, but today we're just going to go ahead and we're going to create one. And let me also show you that as we create these resources and we refresh up here, let's reduce my subscription scope because everything I'm doing is under my default subscription. So let's go back. Let's just be in a little slow. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, so here, let's find my new, here's my new resource group. Great, let me make it a little bigger for you. So within my resource group, I haven't created anything yet. So now I want to. And the first thing, like I said, I want to create, I'm just going to make this a little bit more visible. There's no resources. So I want to create my first resource. It's a network. So I don't have to create the network in here, because if I want to replicate this quickly, I may just want to do it via CLI, whatever. So I can just copy this instruction, and let's talk about what I'm going to do. So I'm going to create a network. So it's AZ network NSG security group. And that is actually, I got to create the virtual network first. My bad. We actually have to create the network for it to live in. So AZ network VNet create essentially says, I want to create a virtual network on Azure. I want it to exist in the resource group J Gordon AFB. The name of the network is going to be my VNet. And then the first subnet we're going to create is my subnet. Now, we don't have to do any actual CIDR subnetting rules here. It's going to be done for us automatically. So all I have to do now is go in here, paste it in, and hit enter. And so within just a few seconds, it's going to create that network. It's going to create that subnet, and then it's going to allow me to get the output. So now you can see it quickly. A default network rules were allowed to actually deny all outbound, which is by default. So by default, you will always have a deny outbound for your network, unless you create rules that say you can let things in. And the same with denying inbound. You can't get inbound unless you tell people what. So you're reducing the scope of security. If you don't tell people what you want access to, they won't be able to get in and get access to it. I think I'm a little wrong, though, by one thing. I think that by default, you can get out. So I think you can get out by default, but you can't come in. Pretty sure that's the way it works. So excuse me for that, misstating that last. So now we've created a virtual network. The next thing we want to do is create a public IP address. And the public IP address is where my server is going to be able to be publicly accessible to the internet. And so what I'm going to do is say, create a public IP address, create it in the resource group J Gordon AFB, and then name it my public IP. So that's just the naming convention. So we know the names of our different IP addresses, because they may be moved around. We might want to call it, prod IP 01, because it gets moved between different servers, because maybe you do blue-green deployments and you need to use these IP addresses to handle your servers, clusters of some kind. I'm just taking a guess. So we created our public IP address, and if you see, it's currently in the creation process. And so we don't see it right away. It's just going through and accessing it. But if you wanted to, you could use the command line to get it, or just go here. There's my public IP. And if you look in here, you'll see that, well, as soon as this is done being allocated, we'll actually get a real IP address that we can start accessing. So cool. Now we've got that. The next step is to create a network security group. So this is going to allow us to actually allow access to resources that are running on the server. So if, let's say, there is an HTTP server, we can open up port 80. SSH server, we can open up port 22. If we have, say, a MySQL server, and we want to open it up just to a few machines, we can open up and create a rule for port 3306. But we need a place to actually put these all, and we don't want to have them just randomly having rules all over the place. They need to be organized. So network security groups let us organize network rules, basically saying, I want 80 to allow in, I want 20 to allow in. And then we can apply that to a number of resources, and specifically, in this case, our virtual machines. So we can have a number of virtual machines all have the same network security group rules. So if I want to have a group of 50 production servers all have the exact same network access, I can do that. I can say that all these machines are allowed me to SSH in, they're allowed to have port 80 open, and they have a service running on port, say, 2206 that we want to make open just to certain machines in the world. We can do that in just one network security group. So what we'll do is just copy this. We'll paste it over like we did. And so now our network security group is created. It's got the name My Network Security Group. It just takes a second. And then what we can do is begin the process of creating our virtual machine. And so what we do is we create a virtual network card. And so that is literally like the physical card that you plug into a computer. But let's imagine that physical card came pre-assigned with some information on it. So let's say it came pre-assigned with a public IP address and the network security group attached to it. And so let's say I could take that network card and plug it into any one of my computers I want whenever I need to, because let's say maybe the VM server fails, but I still need all that network configuration for some particular reason. These are just old infrastructure as a service problems to fix. We can take that card out, unplug it, and then plug it into another VM. So what we're doing right here is we're trying to create that network card, that virtual NIC, network interface. And what we're going to do is just paste it in here. Oh, excuse me, still buffered. So let me copy this. Let's talk about every line. So we're going to create a new network card. We're going to put it in the resource group, JGordon AFB. We're going to call it My NIC, My Network Interface Card. We're going to make sure it's attached to My VNet, what we just created a minute ago. The subnet, My subnet, that's where the traffic is going to run. The network security group that we just created right here, network security group, that is going to allow me to keep things in the same security group across a number of different servers. And so all my network cards will be, by default, have this network security group attached to them. And so if I make any changes to my network security group, it'll automatically be applied to this network interface card. And then eventually we're going to specify the IP address that's associated, the public IP we just created right a few minutes ago. And if we look here and we refresh, come on, don't make a fool out of me. All right, well, this is still allocating, but when this is finished, then essentially this IP address will be attached to this card, and we can go ahead and put that in any VM we want, so we have that pre-configured setup. So let's go ahead and copy this. And so we'll create our virtual network card. Copy. We'll paste it right in here. And like every single time we paste something in, we get JSON output. Ooh, so let's see. My NIC was not found. All right. So, oh, I see. Let's try this again. Okay, so let's figure out. So my subnet reference. So did I not do this? I'll just copy it. So that's the other thing. This is idempotent. So if you run it once, it's not a big deal. You can run it again. Most things in Azure are idempotent. So if they don't exist, they'll exist after you do this. There we go. There's my virtual network. Let's make sure my subnet is created. So I'm just running through this stuff again. There's my resource group, my security group. And so let's try running my virtual network again. We'll copy this. It'll finish creating our NSG, and if it already exists, it'll tell me that it's there. So let's take a look here. Let's see, do we have my IP address yet? Huh, where's my IP? All right, so let's take a look at here. We've got my here. Let's see where everything is now. So there's my virtual network. Yeah, so I jumped the gun a bit. I apologize. So we've got, let's go through the steps we've done so far. We've created a resource group. We've created a virtual network. We've created an IP address to associate everything with. Thank you. I appreciate the yay. Thanks for the encouragement. So then after that, we create the network security group that all of our rules are going to live in. And now we have to create our network card. So let's go ahead, copy. Come on, gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Don't ask what for. 1, 2, 3. Come on, create. Sorry, sometimes I turn to black flag when I need results. It's the old punker in me. So it's just creating this network interface, which is going to take a minute. That's why it's going. And let's take a look what's going on in my resource group now. Oh, so there, that's done. We created our network interface. Let's take a look at refresh. Sometimes it takes a second. There it is. There's my NIC. That was the last thing we just built. And we'll eventually have our IP address associated with it. All right, cool. Let's move along, all right? Why don't we? So we'll go over here. Let's figure out what's going on with this IP address. Do we have an IP yet? Huh, all right. So I think once we associate this with an IP address, with a virtual machine, it'll go ahead and allocate it. But just to be sure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run that one more time. I'm pretty sure it's going to say it's already done. But I always like to be sure, and it is idempotent, so you can run it as many times as you want. So let's just run this once more. It probably will tell me it's already created, or it'll just act like it's doing it again. So once that's finished, the next thing is just to actually create the virtual machine. And so let me talk you through what's going to happen. So AZVM create, the applet VM has a create function, and that create function allows you to specify a resource group, which in this case is the one we created, J Gordon AFB. There we go. There's our IP address allocation, so it's going. Then our name, my VM, which is the name of the virtual machine I want to create. The NIC, the network interface card we created right here. We gave it a name, my NIC. There it is, my NIC. So we're going to attach that. Then we're going to create with an image. So the Ubuntu LTS image is the default image for, I believe it's 1804. Let's see. You can always look up different images. So Azure Linux images list. So you can select all these different types of VM images from the marketplace. You can just list them out here. So if I go here and I run this, copy. So AZVM list image, we see all these images that are available to us right here and there. So what we're going to use is that Ubuntu, there's a ton more in the marketplace, but these are just some of the basic ones. So if you see Ubuntu LTS, it's 1804 LTS, which is long-term support, which means Ubuntu will keep all of the required, it'll keep all the required support packages that are needed. It'll continue to provide packages for us. And when that expires, then you got to move on to the next LTS. All right, so you ready to build the VM? I think we got ourselves all the way to the point where our network card is created. We can generate SSH keys because that's how we're going to access it. And remember what I said in the very beginning of the stream. If I already have SSH keys in my .ssh directory with that IDRSA default key, then I don't need to even do anything. It'll just automatically use that key pair so that I can SSH in once this is finished. So it'll inject a key pair and I'll be able to just start working. And then when I'm done with this, I need to be able to SSH into the server. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to create an initial SSH rule. But then what I'm going to do is show you actually how to lock it down a little bit more. And we're going to do that actually in the, and now we even have our public IP address. That's the IP that's associated with our server. And so what I'm saying is what we're going to do is tighten it up so that only I can log into it, okay, from my IP address at my home. That's what we're going to do. We're going to lock it down a little. So our VM is up, See how quickly that goes? And now it's going through the process of its initial boot of Linux. It'll inject a key. And then once that's finished, we can do things like, I got to actually create that SSH rule first. So let me actually create this SSH rule so we can log into the machine. So here's our last thing that we have to do. We're going to tell the Azure Resource Manager that I want to run AZ VM open port. I want to open port 22. I want it to be for resource group, my resource group, and I want it to be name my VM. So that's just going to allow VM traffic to this one host. That isn't enough for me. That's just not, oh, I made a mistake. I forgot to update my resource group name because I changed it. So all I have to do is change it to, it's just J Gordon, AFB. And so this is going to allow just a single port 22 rule. And I honestly don't find that to be sufficient for the concepts of network security, basic day one security. That's not great. So we've created that rule. Our port 22 is open. We're ready to kind of get down and jam on our new server. So let's clear this. Now we can go here to resource groups. We'll go back to J Gordon AFB. And so I am going to just SSH from this side. I'm going to try to do this one-on-one from side to side just to make it a little bit more easy to see. So let me also make sure this is big enough for you. I think it is. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're doing all this in our Cloud Shell. Our Cloud Shell is using Bash. We've got our network security groups. We've got everything. Our VM's up. So if I go here in the, we see our VM IP address here in the JSON earlier. You can go back, you can find it, and you can use AZVM show if you wanted to get that info, or you can do it right here in the browser. I'm just going to do it here in the browser so we can wrap up on what we're working on. So if I copy the IP address here, or I click connect, pick SSH, we're going to get information on how to SSH into the server. And so right here, I'm given instructions. I don't need to specify the path because it's the default key in my path. So that I just type SSH J at the IP address. It's going to ask me to confirm the fingerprint. Yes. And then I'm logged into the server. Now there's a problem here, is that all we did was just allow the world to SSH into the server. It kind of stinks, like I said. So what we can do, and here's a quick trick. So we're going to go to J Gordon AFB. We're going to go to the network security group right here. And we're going to look at the default rules. Here's that default open 22 rule. I hate this rule, this nasty little rule. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to replace this. So we're going to remove this source from any to IP addresses. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find out what my IP address is. So I'm going to exit the SSH session. And I'm going to do this, curl icanhasip.com. What's curl? It's a tool to simply grab some information from a web page, website. It'll grab data. It'll pull it locally. You don't necessarily even need to do this. You could do it in a browser. I just make it easy. So that's my IP address of my, I think, the VM that, so this is actually the Cloud Shell. I need to do this on my local computer. So let's see, curl, is that here? Yeah. So you can see we can do curl, has IP address. If you do this from your local computer, what it should do is get you that, your IP address. It should tell you what your IP is. And my IP is this. This is my local computer. From my gateway router, this is the IP address that I'm communicating to all other machines in the world from. So what I can do is pop that in here and then make it a CIDR range of /32. So /32 specifies that this is the only IP. This is the last in the subnet, the IP. This is what we want to access. Is it Azure DevOps? No, not really. This isn't Azure DevOps. This is just basic Azure security and Azure VM utilization. But thank you for watching. So all we have to do here, like I said, I modified this from any to IP addresses. And I specified my local computer's IP. I don't need to modify the protocol. I don't need to modify the action. And we could leave the priority to 900. If I click save. So let's show you how to do one more little bit of hardening. So once this rule completes, let's go back to the Cloud Shell. What I'm going to need to SSH now from my local computer. So I'm just going to grab this SSH command. And I'm going to bring up my Ubuntu shell just so I feel more at home. And now I'm just going to SSH from my Ubuntu. Bad owner. Okay, that's my fault. CH mod is it 600, I think. Let's see now. Yep. That's a thing you don't need to worry about. That's just how my SSH is configured on my local computer, and I haven't done it yet. So let's see. Permissions for this. So I have some keys with there's two permissive permissions. So what I want to do is go here, copy this, and chmod, we're going to do that 600 to that key. There we go. What did I just do? I fixed file system permissions on my key files so they're not too permissive. This is just because I copied it over just the other day. It's a brand new computer that I'm working with. So as you can see, my IP network restriction allows me now to only allow open port 22 to this single IP, which is where I'm communicating from. I was able to get it. Now I want to actually run a web server and then open the port to the web server in the network security group. So I'm going to sudo apt-get install, and I'm just going to use nginx, very, very simple web server. So now it's just going to go ahead, it's going to use the standard Ubuntu packages. It's going to install nginx and all the requirements, and then it'll start it. So let's just give it a second. But while it's doing that, I'm going to run this server on port 80, and that means I need to add the rule. So let's show you if I wanted to create a rule, and we'll just do this, service nginx, start. Oh, I got to do it with sudo. My bad, sudo service nginx start. And if we curl localhost, we'll see port 80 is open with the default page. So all we really need to do now is create a rule in our network security group. So we're in our resource group. We'll click on our network security group. Now we have inbound and outbound. I want to create a new inbound connection. I want to come in the door. I want to knock on it to say yeah. So I need to do something just like our open port 22 rule. So I'll just click add. And from there, I'll go ahead and I'm just going to put port 80. This is the port we want to allow. And I want anyone from anywhere, anytime, because I want them to go to my website. I'm going to change the name to port 80, and then I'm going to just use priority of 901. So our main one is 900. Our next one is 901. And I'm just going to put a description of HTTP service nginx. We'll click add. And so right now, this sends a call to Azure Resource Manager. That creates the rule. And when it's done, it's there. What we should be able to do now, so what's my IP address? Let's get that. So curl, I can do that curl. I can has IP even on the VM, so I know the IP address that the VM is using. Just go into a web server. And there, or actually a web browser, and there's our new nginx server. It's up and it's ready. And to get rid of all these things, what do we have to do? So AZ VM, I should say, no, AZ group show output, and we'll do table. Oh, I haven't installed it on this particular shell. My bad. I'm sorry. AZ VM or AZ group show output table. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate the applause. Okay, so you'll see we can show, or actually what we're going to do here is list. So AZ group list, it's a list all of our research groups. And then what we're going to do is we want to delete this default resource group EU. No, not that one, excuse me. We want to delete this J Gordon AFB one. I would have to delete that other resource group at some point. So to delete this particular resource group, all we need to do is AZ group delete name, and it'll be J Gordon AFB, and then it'll ask me, are you sure? And I'll say, yep, I'm sure. So let's wrap this thing up. Why don't you think? Yeah, me, you. We'll chill. We'll finish up things. Well, doing this is a good kind of thing that you can talk about next. Do it with 443. I mean, adding 443 is just doing the same process. What's going to be more difficult is that you need to get a certificate. You need to register the private key certificate pair. Then you need to go ahead into the configuration files in Nginx. You need to make that available. Then you actually need to get the host name configured. And then you can actually do HTTPS and then create the network security rule. And that's a way to actually get 443 working. It's a few steps to actually go by, and it's not 1, 2, 3. And this is the big reason why we leverage automation to do a lot of this stuff. It becomes such a helpful part of the process of ensuring that when we do things like this, that we're able to do it a few times, that we're not always doing things manually. And then that's eventually what you learn. The more we work with automation, the more that we streamline our process, the more that we actually become pretty adept at doing these things. So I'm going to start kind of wrapping things up. I'm going to grab a song here, kind of keep on as I talk to you all in the background. Ooh, that's that nice Windows sound. And if you ever need background music for anything, I make this music. It's all cheap, Creative Commons, so it's free for you to reproduce in any way you want. Just don't make changes to it, is all I ask. Hey, that's really it for today's stream. I want to thank everybody for watching me today. I thought it was a great way to kind of, get today moving and grooving and really feeling like it's the start of Monday. So if you go to the link behind me on the bottom, you're going to see there's a link to get $200 in free credit for Azure. I'm going to have a bunch of stuff up later today, but if you look at the YouTube stream links now, there's links to all the stuff we talked about today. Thank you very much, Phil. Rico's been a little sick, and a lot of people have come through to help make donations so that we can get him some great care. And we're really starting to see him get a little better. It's a process. It's going to take some time, but I'm thankful for a lot of you being really nice to me about it. But overall, hey, that's it for today's stream. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave comments, subscribe, share with your friends, whatever it is you got to do. Just give me a hand. I want more people to be part of this. I'll always make sure when we do these early week streams that I go ahead and do the votes first, just to make sure I'm getting the best live audience I can. But you can watch the recordings. You can read the information in Dev2. You can leave me a comment on almost any of those platforms: Dev2, YouTube, Twitter. You can contact me on Twitter anytime. And thank you very much for the sweet wishes for Rico. I really appreciate it. But yeah, that's really it. I'll catch you on Thursday. I'll be doing a stream then. I'll be in a bunch of pain because before Rico got sick, I prepaid for a tattoo, and I'm finally going to get a chance to get it done. I'm going to be in immense pain and crying, but I'm still going to do my show on Thursday. So thanks a lot for watching. It's been really cool to have you all take part in this as I kind of try out some new stuff. So we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for watching Azure Fun Bites. I'll see you then.